Let's jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a seriously fascinating, deeply abstract narrative by Max and Claude. It's simply called No Title. But hey, this isn't just your standard story. It's a profound philosophical exploration of how language literally shapes our reality, our relationships, and honestly, even our brains. It asks a pretty startling question. Who are we without the fundamental anchor of a name? I want you to really think about this for a second. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning without that compass needle. No specific sound that instantly snaps your attention across a crowded room. No you, anchored by a neat little label. By completely stripping away this one universal piece of the human experience, this narrative instantly builds an incredible sense of empathy. We are right there with the protagonist who has to navigate their entire life completely unnamed. Section 1. This setup: bureaucracy versus existence. Let's look at the inciting incident of the novel, where a beautifully mundane administrative glitch creates a lifelong existential condition. So we're hit with this fundamental question right out of the gate. What happens in a kingdom with absolutely no king? When we talk about language and childhood development, your name is basically your king word. It sits right smack in the middle of your linguistic universe. Everything else, like cop, dog, mother, is general. But your name, that's specific to you. So what actually happens when that central node is just missing? The source traces this back to an almost absurd administrative timeline. Get this. A hospital clerk named Dolores is filling out the birth certificate. Right as she's about to write the baby's name down, her pen dies, literally runs out of ink. And in the 30 seconds it takes her to find a new one, the parents start arguing. This argument escalates into a full-blown proxy war for their failing relationship. The dad wants the name Ezra, the mom absolutely insists on Flora. Because of this, they completely miss the 28-day regulatory window to name the baby. Actually, they end up arguing about it for 4 entire years. During all that time, the state simply files the child as pending under a coordinate, NR44J. It's not a name at all. It's literally just a location in a filing system. Section 2. The democracy of words. Language without a center. You know, growing up as NR44J fundamentally alters human psychology and perception. The child doesn't experience this as some massive loss because, well, you can't really miss what you never had, right? Instead, it builds an entirely different neurological landscape. Think about it. For us, the named, language is a strict hierarchy. We have what's called the cocktail party effect. If you're at a loud party and someone says your name, your brain instantly cuts through all the static to hear it. It's a total automatic reflex. But our unnamed protagonist experiences what the text calls a democracy of words. Since they don't have a name, no single sound triggers that reflex. Every single word is equidistant from the center. For them, language is entirely flat, entirely equal, and totally democratic. Later on, as an adult, the protagonist tries to explain this bizarre reality to a friend named Sarah. They tell her, I wake up, plural. Because they don't have a designated north, a name that forces you into a singular cohesive identity the second you open your eyes, they actually have to consciously choose a direction every single morning. It's this exhausting daily negotiation with the self that those of us with names never even have to think about. And that brings us to this incredibly hard-hitting realization from the text. The name is the illusion of a center. Let that sink in for a second. The crucial takeaway here is that a name doesn't actually create stability at all. It just masks the inherent instability of human identity. We're all shifting, complex, and plural. But having a name, it gives us this really convenient handle. It's an illusion that tricks us into thinking we are one fixed, permanent thing. Moving on to Section 3, the translated self, the seam of translation. Now, because of this entirely unique relationship with language, it makes perfect sense that the adult protagonist ends up working as a translator of 6 different languages. But here's the catch. They aren't drawn to perfect, clean translations. Nope. They are magnetically drawn to the gaps. They love the seams where meaning gets totally lost or just doesn't quite fit. To really get this, let's walk through a quick glossary of foreign concepts that deeply resonate with the protagonist. First up is door, which is a Romanian word, and it's not just basic longing or homesickness. It's the intensely felt presence of something absent, the strange fullness of a gone thing. This perfectly captures how the protagonist finds real emotional resonance in words that English just cannot neatly categorize or translate. Then we have hyrith. This is a beautiful Welsh word that means the homesickness for a home that never existed.
The protagonist uses this specific concept to explain their longing for the experience of being named. See, they don't miss a specific name because they never actually had one. What they miss is the condition of the named life. It's a home they never actually got to inhabit.
Next up is mono no aware from Japanese. This translates to the bittersweet awareness of impermanence, or the ache of loving something that is already leaving. This concept really highlights the protagonist's profound sensitivity to transient raw moments. When they translate texts, they flat out refuse to erase the seams or the awkward phrasing just to make it sound perfectly native in English. For them, leaving the luggage visible, leaving that friction in the text, well, that's the only honest way to translate, because honestly, life itself doesn't translate perfectly either. Which brings us to a word the protagonist actually invents themselves, the internym. This is a functional description that's used in place of a traditional name. For instance, their friend Sarah just thinks of them internally as the person whose eyes change with the light. It's a gorgeous concept, right? It proves that intimate, highly specific descriptions are oftentimes way more honest and meaningful than official state-assigned names.
Section 4. The uncatalogued library, the ultimate test. Eventually, the protagonist finds a true sanctuary in the city library's fourth floor uncatalogued section. This is a very special space entirely dedicated to materials that completely defy categorization.
Think about how a standard library system works. It relies entirely on reducing complex things down to simple labels: title, author, Dewey Decimal Number. But the uncatalogued territory, it operates on a completely different wavelength. Here, an item's specific physical location, like just being in the northeast corner on a Tuesday at 4 p.m., is its entire identity. It absolutely doesn't need a neat little label to exist or to be found. Inside this chaotic section, our protagonist repeatedly reads this untethered, completely unnamed 300-page manuscript. It's essentially a novel about a fictional library that organizes lost books by their specific manner of loss. So you have books left on trains, books eaten by animals, but here's the kicker. The absolute longest shelf in this fictional library is entirely dedicated to books that were never even written down. Books that only ever existed as unexecuted intentions. Reading this part of the manuscript, the protagonist has this quiet, just immensely powerful realization. They say, "I am the word that hasn't been invented yet." They literally recognize their own entire existence in that exact gap of unexecuted intentions. They are the living, breathing space between the hospital clerk writing down the first letter and the pen completely running out of ink. But of course, bureaucratic systems absolutely despise things they can't neatly categorize. So a community forum is called to discuss completely removing the uncatalogued section. The core threats driving this are pretty standard: heavy budget pressure, administrative documentation gaps, and a strict philosophical priority that favors standard accessibility over preserving the unnameable. The protagonist remembers their mother once warning them that this right here is society's ultimate test. What exactly does a culture do with something that is undeniably real, but just flat out refuses to fit into the system? At this forum, our usually very quiet protagonist actually steps up to the microphone to deliver this deeply impassioned defense. They argue brilliantly that the system is merely the map, it is not the actual territory. By removing uncatalogued items, society is falsely implying that if something lacks a label, it simply isn't real or doesn't matter. The whole job of a library, they argue, is to preserve what is real even when it completely shatters the filing system. Right after that intense meeting, the protagonist finds a tiny note tucked directly into that nameless manuscript by a visiting academic named Jakob. And this note, it proves everything the protagonist has been feeling all along. Jakob simply writes, "Location is the name, Tuesday is the address." It's so beautiful because it completely validates that even a nameless manuscript, and by extension, a nameless person, can be perfectly, precisely found just by the pure fact of their specific existence in the world. And that brings us to the end of today's explainer, but I want to leave you all with a really provocative question to chew on. Look beyond your own king word, beyond your own official name. What are your internyms? What are those intimate, highly functional descriptions that actually truly define you to the people who know you best? And maybe even more importantly, what parts of your identity completely resist categorization, living beautifully in the uncatalogued sections of your own life? It's a lot to think about. See you next time.